Hi everybody, welcome back to our YouTube channel, Monetary Mouth. My name is Jasmine. I'm the founder of Moment Tax Services. If you're a new viewer, thanks so much for stopping by and tuning in to watch this video. And if you're a returning subscriber, we are so happy to have you back, and we look forward to all of you subscribing down below, hitting that notification bell so you stay alerted on all the videos that we upload, and perhaps leaving a comment or two below to let us know if we've been able to help you throughout these application processes for EIDL and PPP protection programs. So in today's video, we are going to talk about 4 very specific things: who can apply, how to apply, what documents you will need to apply, and most importantly, the top five mistakes you should avoid in applying so that your funds are not lost in limbo and pending verification of proof of things. The chances of being able to get through to the SBA or even through the lender that you apply through, whether it be Bluevine, Kabbage, or Lendio, those are the 3 that I will discuss with you today. The chances of being able to get through to them either by phone or email is going to be 0 to none. If you do get through, congrats, that's awesome. But my goal would be for all of you to just be able to apply the first round through efficiently and accurately without needing to get in touch with support teams that are more than likely not going to be able to stay available considering the multitude of people that are going to be applying for this loan. So without further ado, let's get started into this video. All right, guys, so first of the 4 things is who can apply. Now, I'm sharing with you on my screen right now the actual paper application that would be submitted to the SBA if you were filling this out, by hand or typing into it and submitting it directly to the SBA. But I don't recommend doing it this way because, you'll need to find a lender that's going to process the paperwork. And instead, we're actually going to apply through either Lendio, Kabbage, or Bluevine, which are the 3, let's say, third-party sites that will walk you through interview style in answering these very same questions that are on this application. I think rather than going through and discussing these individual questions through the lender's portal that we would be applying through, I'm going to just go through it very quickly for the specific points that I want to mention on the application itself. And then just realize that when you create a Lendio portal and you're going through Lendio and applying for this Paycheck Protection Program, these are the same questions that it's going to be asking you, but instead it'll just be like an interview style. So similar to if you were filing your taxes through TurboTax, you wouldn't be filling your information into the tax form specifically itself. You would be answering questions through an interview style method, and the robot itself would gather all of your responses and populate them onto this form where applicable. So for that reason, it's a little bit easier to answer your questions or walk you through the application using the actual SBA Paycheck Protection Program application, which, as you see here, is updated and revised as of January 8th of 2021. And then we can quickly go through and perhaps apply through Lendio as well, just so that you can see how it would look like in the interview method. All right, so the first thing we said we were going to talk about is who can apply. As you see here, the options above, we have sole proprietor, partnership, C Corp, S Corp, LLC, independent contractor, and self-employed, surely nonprofit organizations, housing cooperatives, and tribal businesses. For those who know they are not an LLC and they are not a corporation, meaning you're not an S corporation, you're not a C corporation, you're not an LLC, and you're not a partnership, rather you are a gig worker, a VIPKID teacher, an Uber driver, an Etsy seller, or namely any other occupation, self-employed occupation that requires you to file Schedule C with your tax return, you would be choosing either sole proprietor, independent contractor, or self-employed individual. All those three things are the exact same thing. I'm not really sure why the application gives you all three options when in reality, down on paper, those all mean the exact same thing. A self-employed individual is more than likely an independent contractor who is definitely also a sole proprietor. Now, an independent contractor might be distinguished by someone who actually receives a 1099 form from another party, as opposed to perhaps a self-employed individual as someone who works on their own and maybe, for example, is an Etsy seller that is not waiting to get a 1099 from Etsy, but rather they're reporting their self-employment earnings themselves. But all of those things would be categorized under a self-employed individual. So really any of the above could go forward. I would say if you are getting a 1099, let's say you're a VIPKID teacher and you are getting a 1099, opt for independent contractor since you are getting a 1099. If you're someone who runs a business, let's say, for example, you sell something and you are responsible for tracking your own sales, you're not waiting for someone to give you a 1099 statement at the end of the year in order to report your sales and earnings on your taxes, then perhaps go with the self-employed option. But in either case, all of those people are qualified to apply for this program. So for the sake of this application, I'm going to go ahead and just choose self-employed individual, since that really umbrellas both a sole proprietor and an independent contractor. Now, moving forward to the second form, DBA or trade name. If you are not an LLC or corporation or partnership, meaning you chose self-employed, independent contractor or sole proprietor here, you will not have a DBA or trade name, and that's why it says if applicable, because that would be your own name yourself. You are doing business as yourself. So unless you went through your county or city or any other jurisdiction and registered yourself to do business as someone other than your legal name, you would leave this blank. So this would possibly be NA. Now, when you go to year of establishment, if you were someone who was an LLCS corporation, C corporation, or partnership, you would put the date here that you registered that entity with the state at whichever level you registered that. So like in the state of California here, we would register LLCs and corporations with the Secretary of State. You would put the date here. If you are not, and you are applying as a self-employed individual, independent contractor, and sole proprietor, then you would just write the year that you first started doing this trade or, performing in this business. Namely, for VIPKID teachers, if you became a teacher in 2017, then you would put 2017. I would personally suggest it's best to put the year that you first had a tax return filed for this. So if you started teaching in 2017, put 2017, because more than likely you got a 1099 in 2017, and so on and so forth. But as long as you can verify that you earned money in the year that you're putting in this area, then you should be fine. Moving forward to business legal name. If you are self-employed individual, you will be putting your own legal name exactly as it would appear on your tax return. And make sure that your maiden name versus your married name, those things have to be accurate as they were on your tax return, or else that's one of the fumbles that creates a huge delay in this application not being processed. So in this case, we're actually going to be applying for my assistant. Her legal name, and because she does not have an LLC or a DBA registered anywhere, her business name would just be her legal name by itself. When you come over to NAICS code, this is the code that you may or may not have handy. If you don't have it handy, leave it blank. It's okay. Your application will not get rejected for leaving it blank. If you come to your Schedule C, this is the tax form that you would have had submitted with your tax return. That is the number that is in box B over here. And it's basically a number that pertains to the industry that your revenue is attached to. It's also very easy to Google this information, write in NAICS codes into Google, and there should be some websites that come up that allow you to search your NAICS code. And if you are someone who has filed your taxes with us and you have a Schedule C, then certainly your Schedule C will have that NAICS code for you on your Schedule C. If we did not file your taxes for you, refer back to your Schedule C, and hopefully that is in there for you. But again, if it's not, nothing you need to worry about, just leave it blank for now. Moving forward to applicant meet size standard, you'll be checking the first one, which is no more than 500 employees. And for those that are applying for this on the second round, they have to meet the contingency that they don't have more than 300 employees. So either way, you would be applying and clicking on this first one. And then we'll move down to business address and street name. You want to make sure that this address is the same one that matches your bank, your IRS records. You don't want to have a different address for all different things because, you know, this application, there's not going to be a human being on the other end of it processing the application for you. These applications are going to go through robots that take pictures of your application versus the voided check you upload versus your driver's license versus all of these things. Now, I'm not suggesting that if your driver's license address is different than your IRS address that you're automatically going to be denied or something like that. But do your best to make sure that your addresses match all around so that there is less delay in the processing of your paperwork, meaning less things for them to verify and double check to make sure that you're an actual person and not, you know, a computer robot scamming to apply for these applications. The more coherent and concise everything is together, the faster your application will process. So there goes your address. You'll put it here, and then we'll move over to business EIN or social security number. Same thing as the information I shared with you above over here. If you are an LLC, S corporation, or partnership, more than likely, well, I mean, you should have an EIN number, so you would be putting your EIN number. But if you are a self-employed individual, independent contractor, or sole proprietor, more than likely you do not have an EIN number, so you would be opting in to put your social security number. We'll move forward to business phone. You'll put in your phone number here, primary contact, yourself, email address. Please make sure you put an email address that you have access to. You don't want them to be sending you updates or emails about additional paperwork or documentation they need from you, and you're just simply not getting their emails. All right, so that top part is mostly basic information. I wanted to make sure I addressed the DBA, business name, business type, all of that, because that ended up being a huge problem in the last round of EIDL loans. There was a lot of confusion about what type of entity people should select for themselves to be. So I'm glad that that's cleared up for this round here. Now, moving down to the average monthly payroll cost. This is definitely where your Schedule C, this form that is part of your tax form, is going to come into place. For the purpose of this application, you can either use your 2019 Schedule C that was already filed or that should have already been filed with your 2019 taxes, or if you believe that your 2020 numbers are going to be in your best interest for a higher loan amount for the purpose of this application, then you are able to upload a preliminary version of what your filed 2020 Schedule C will be. Now, that doesn't mean you should go put whatever numbers on your 2020 Schedule C that you can Google and download this form and put whatever numbers you want here, because ultimately, the same way that it happened with the EIDL and first round of PPP loans, once the tax deadline for filing your 2020 taxes comes up, you will have to go back and upload your 2020 Schedule C that you ultimately did submit to the IRS. So don't make up numbers, put numbers to be as accurate as you expect them to be upon filing your 2020 tax return. I understand that 99% of people do not have this because tax filing doesn't even begin for almost another 2 weeks. But if you know, for example, that you are expecting a $30,000 1099 from VIPKID, you could at least fill out this top information with your name, your social security number, all the information that applies to you, put $30,000 here in the gross, put some rough estimates of what you believe your expenses might be in this area, and then come down to the bottom, add up your total expenses here, subtract that from your gross up here, and then you'll have a final number at the bottom here. This final number here, line 31 of your Schedule C, is what is going to help you complete this PPP application. So if you notice, you come down here and it says average monthly payroll. Your average monthly payroll is going to be this line 31, which was the net income you made from your self-employment journey, divided by 12 months to tell you how much you would have made on a monthly basis or how much you took home on payroll. And I put payroll in quotes because this is not the definition of payroll. Payroll is a completely separate process in of itself, and it requires filing payroll taxes and whatnot. So that's why I say it in quotes. But your line 31 of your Schedule C, in a sense, is, let's say, your take-home amount. So in this case, I'm going to take $6,000 because, let's say, for example, she made $7,800 total for the year in self-employment income. And for the sake of keeping numbers round, we're estimating that she's going to have about $1,800 in expenses, leaving her a round $6,000 number. That $6,000 divided by 12 is going to give her $500 a month. And that would be her monthly, in this amount, average monthly payroll, 500. And the very next box says times 2.5 plus EIDL. I almost want you to forget this EIDL because only very few of you took the loan. But if you did take the loan, then you'll just add that number here. So in this case, that she did not take an EIDL loan, and it says do not include the advance. So if you got the $1,000 advance grant, part of the EIDL loan process a few months ago, you do not need to include that $1,000 grant. But if you took the subsequent loan that they offered you after that, then you do want to include it. So for the purpose of this application, we're going to take her 500 and we're going to multiply it by 2.5. And she's going to get 1,250. Okay, so 1,250, and she is only one person because you're applying as a self-employed, sole proprietor, or independent contractor. Now, if you were an LLC or S Corp or whatnot, and you had multiple employees, surely you would put the total number of employees that you have in this section. Moving down to the purpose of the loan. 99% of you, especially if you are self-employed applying for this, you will click on just payroll costs, but it does allow you to click on multiple. So payroll costs, mortgage, utilities, and covered operations expenditures. So for self-employed individuals, let's say VIPKID teachers, since there's 12,000 of you in this group that I'm making specifically this video for, your payroll costs are, it's going to turn out to be ultimately the profit of what you have on your 2020 or 2021 that you will file next year tax return. And then if this amount, let's say the 1,250, is more than what your payroll ends up being next year, like let's say you don't end up working a lot this year, or you do work and maybe your expenses are over the top, so you don't really have that much profit left over on your Schedule C, and so the profit you have left over on your Schedule C is less than this 1,250, you are able to use the remainder for mortgage interest, utilities, and other operations expenditures for your business, meaning supplies, anything else that is required to operate your business. Okay. Now this portion of it here is, surely you should tell them what you expect to use it for, but I just want to make a note to say this portion is really important if you're going to be applying, and you all should be applying for this loan to be forgiven. So it starts off as a loan, 60 months repayment. Payments don't start for 10 months, 1% interest rate. But before all of this happens, before the loan becomes a loan, let's say, that requires payback, you do have the option, and you will be given the opportunity to apply for this loan to be forgiven and therefore become a grant. In order for that to happen, you will have to show the SBA how you spent this money, and if it qualifies for forgiveness based on them allowing you to use it for these things, then you'll be able to get the loan turned into a grant, therefore forgiven, and it does not need to be paid back. All right, guys, so then we'll go back down. The rest of it is here, let's say applicant ownership. If you are self-employed, you're just going to be putting yourself, you're going to put owner, 100%, your social security number, your address. Again, make sure all of those things are the same. If you are an LLC with partners, meaning you're a partnership or you're a corporation with multiple shareholders, then you would be adding those people's information here with the correct percentages allocated to each owner. We'll go down the application and see, these are all just very basic questions that you should apply honestly and truthfully, because this is a federal application that you're filling out and you are signing this under penalty of perjury. So make sure that all of these questions are answered properly. Basically, do you have any felonies? Did you do this? Did you do that? Yes or no's all the way down. This will just be the signature page. You're going to initial all the way down, sign it, come back down, make sure you read all of it to see if there's information in there that you specifically need for you, and come down to the bottom. This will just be more information for you to read for the instructions. If you want to disclose to them, about your demographic information, then you can. If you choose not to, as it says down here, this is entirely voluntary, so you don't need to share with them that information if you don't need to. All right, guys, so this, again, is the Paycheck Protection Program application. I do not suggest you fill it out like this and send it to the SBA and wait for mail and wait for shipping and wait for processing. I suggest that you instead use a portal such as Lendio, such as Cabbage, or such as Bluevine. Now, as far as my understanding and up to this morning's research that we've done, only Lendio and Bluevine are ready and available to process applications. So when you're going through this application process, you're just going to create yourself an account here real quick. You may get an email saying, verify your email. And then once you click on verify in your email, then you'll be able to log in and, move forward with your application. And the application is going to ask you exactly these same questions that we went through. And you'll be able to submit the application. And then as long as you make sure you put in your account number, routing number, bank address, name, social security number, as long as you do all of this very slowly and efficiently and accurately, you should have these funds deposited into your bank account within, some people say as early as instantly when they submit it, but I'm not going to go out on the edge and say it's going to be instantly. They say it takes about 3 to 5 days, but even if they were backed up and it took a week, you will still be getting email communications to follow through the process. So once you apply, there'll be an email that will say log in and review what you've been qualified for. And then once you click accept, you'll get a DocuSign that will have you go through an initial to accept. And then it should just be as easy as it depositing into your bank account, as long as you did everything accurately and efficiently. So speaking of doing everything accurately and efficiently, there's 5 things I want to share with you that I not only prefer, but I suggest that you guys do to make sure that there are no delays. I'm going to look down on my notes for that very quickly. The number 1 would be your address and your name as you write it. Please make sure those things are being written accurately and correctly. If you have your maiden name or your married last name on your license, but not on your tax return and whatnot, you want to make sure that you put the information exactly as it appears on your tax return, because that's what you're going to be uploading for verification of this business revenue that you're generating, which is qualifying you for this loan. So number 1, just make sure all of your information is put in correctly, your social security number, your bank account numbers, your routing numbers. Don't put a bank account that is closed and then realize, oh my gosh, it's closed. Do your due diligence in filling out the information. Number 2, one of the documents that you will need to upload, and this is mainly because there was so many issues with this part of this for the EIDL loans in the past, you will need to upload an image of a voided check. That's why I have this here for you. Most people don't use checks anymore these days. I understand that. It costs you probably about $1 to go into your bank and get a sheet of checks, maybe $2. At Chase Bank, it's $2 for a sheet of checks with 3 checks. You'll take one and you will just write void on it across so that no one can actually use the check for anything. But that way it'll have your name and address information at the top. And most importantly, it will verify your bank account number and routing number that you're choosing for that direct deposit of that money down at the bottom. So when you write void, let me move this screen over. When you write void across the top here, make sure that you are not covering the numbers here at the bottom. This is your routing number. This is your account number. It would be great if your name and address and everything matched here too. So perhaps you can ask them if it's not updated, if they could update it before they print it out, that would be great. But you do need to get a voided check because they will want to verify the direct deposit information that you put here at the bottom on your application. Third thing, when you get the final step of the application process, which is the DocuSign you'll need to complete in order to accept the loan, which will hopefully turn into a grant if you spend the funds in the correct way. When you get the DocuSign, if you're not familiar with using DocuSign before, just follow the arrows that direct you and lead you to the next signing. Don't scroll through it yourself, because more than likely you will miss one or two of the initials and you will be stuck at the bottom wondering why you can't submit this and why you can't turn in and accept your loan. So there should be a little yellow flag that's going to say, when you click on it, it's going to automatically direct you to the next area that should be signed, and you should follow that so that you don't miss any and get stuck not being able to submit. The fourth thing I mentioned at the beginning, to make sure you use an email address that you currently have access to, that you have the password to, that if you forgot the password to, you have a backup email connected to it or phone number that would allow you to reset the password. Because once you apply, there will be 2 or 3 email follow-ups, namely the first one saying, thanks for applying, the second one saying such and such with a link to follow and log in, and then for sure the last one telling you that your loan has been approved and that you need to click on that link in that email to go in and accept the loan. Speaking of links, if the links are not working for you or they're not loading properly when you click on them on your phone, I highly suggest that you log in through a laptop or a desktop and make sure your internet connection is up to par, good to go, no delays, so that the links can load accurately, efficiently, and properly, and you can proceed on to the next step. And then the final thing I would say, mistakes or situations to avoid is to just make sure that you are putting exact numbers, exact information off of your tax return. If you think it's going to be a headache for you to make your 2020 tax return available to you as a preliminary estimate to apply, then just go off of your 2019 tax return. Most people probably made more money in 2019 than they did in 2020 anyway, so that might be in your best interest to use 2019 rather than 2020. I can't speak on that for sure, but again, if you feel like coming up with 2020 figures is going to be too difficult, then just go off of 2019, and that way you have specific, accurate numbers that have already been reported to the IRS, and you have the information you need to upload. All right, guys, I guess the last thing I would say is to just make sure for documents that you need to upload, I probably missed this at the beginning of the video, you need your driver's license, a voided check, your Schedule C from your tax return if you're self-employed. If you're an LLC or a corporation, then you have a full-on separate business tax return that you would submit. And it would be nice to have a February 2020 bank statement available to prove that you were in business and receiving revenue from this line of work in February of 2020. And that way there's no discrepancies about whether you actually qualify for this loan or not. All right, guys, well, I know that was a lot. I hope that you were able to follow through. The information is very basic as far as what you need. It's really your own personal information. I really only imagine the part that is questionable is how to come up with your monthly earnings amount. And for that, I showed you, you just take your net from your Schedule C, divide it by 12 months so that you have a monthly average. And then you take that monthly average and you multiply it by 2.5, and you get the loan amount that you qualify for. You could potentially get up to $20,832, which is the maximum amount eligible for a self-employed single person. If you're a self-employed gig worker, Uber driver, VIPKID teacher, go-go kid teacher, or any of the above, then the maximum is $20,832 that you could potentially apply for. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope that this video added value to you. And if you could kindly subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment below, I will make sure that I have one of my admin assistants that is also very thoroughly informed of this PPP process and application in the comments in the afternoon today in the video, so that she could also be answering any questions that you guys may have. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.